It is November 26th, 2023. The Florida Gators have finished the 2023 season with a 5-7 record, missing a bowl game in Billy Napier's second year. And it's time. Billy Napier needs to hire an offensive coordinator. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Special Sunday show for you. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Written Merkel, Whole Line Sports, Giants, Country NFL 33. If you're part of the Locked On Gators Insiders subtext group, which if you want to sign up, links in the description below. It's 2 weeks free and then $5 per month. Then you got some of this list last week because this has been something where for a long time now we've said, hey, Billy Napier needs to hire an offensive coordinator. And I will continue to stick with the same point I've been making for months now about why Billy Napier needs to hire an offensive coordinator. It is not the offensive system that can't work. Okay? Schematically, this can work fine. Schematically, this Gators offense can be successful. A lot of what this Gators offense does is operate with similar offensive systems to the 49ers and the Rams and all those fun offensive teams. Where this team struggles is one, and most importantly, the little things. That's where this team struggles. You look at the detail-oriented stuff, because again, when Billy Napier was hired, it was look for the detail-oriented stuff. Okay, we're detail-oriented. We're all this, yeah. Well, to this point in your tenure, the details have been the most glaringly obvious weakness of the entire organization since you've been here. Also, since this is coming out on Sunday morning, we did have a postcast last night, so you could check YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We did have a postcast after the game. And I mean, this is being recorded at about 2:30 in the morning on Sunday morning, but yeah, I wanted to do this today because I don't know when a hire is going to happen. Could be today, could be 3 weeks from now. I truly have no clue. But I wanted to talk about this because it's glaringly obvious. Every week you watch this team and you see things happen. And sometimes I stand by the decisions that Billy Napier is making because I can understand the logic behind them. You look at the LSU game, just running the ball before halftime and getting to halftime. LSU's offense is getting hot. Could score at will. Don't give them a chance. Stuff like that, I get. I don't mind some of it. But then there's some areas where it's just it doesn't make sense. And we look at the details, and that's constantly what I look to when I see why this team isn't in a bowl game right now. It's as simple as that. Like we always talk about Florida's 1 or 2 plays away from having this many wins or this many losses. But when I look back at what the Florida Gators did this season, first off, Utah, you barely even got off the bus. So that one's hard to go. Where again, Billy Napier, if you had more time to focus on getting everyone mentally ready, maybe you win that game, or maybe you don't look like a laughing stock at least on the first week of the season. You look at the Charlotte game. I mean, you won that game, but Jesus, that was a bad game. Kentucky, they just pummeled you with long trap, wide trap, power, everything they wanted to beat the crap out of you with. They did exactly that. You look at Georgia, that's Georgia. You look at the Arkansas game and why you didn't win the Arkansas game. And here's the thing, people will talk about the missed field goal until they're blue in the face. They will talk about the illegal substitution until they're blue in the face. But let's be honest here. Let's call a spade, okay? Let's just we can be open and honest here. It's no longer technically Saturday, and Saturdays are for feeling. So today we're not about feeling, but Florida lost the Arkansas game because of Billy Napier. No other way to put it. I don't care how much the defense gave up to Arkansas. What I do care about is that going into that last drive, you had one timeout because you spent two of them to avoid delay of game penalties a few drives earlier. And your starting quarterback, Graham Mertz, was the one who was running to the sidelines screaming about having to use those timeouts. If you have those timeouts, you don't have to worry about sprinting downfield to spike the ball after an Arliss Boardingham catch. You don't have to worry about any of that. That's the detailed stuff where you need to be better. We can look at the Utah game. Even Utah scored a touchdown because you had two number 3s on the field. So then they got the ball continued on a 4th down where they were punting, and then they scored. Yeah, you look at the Missouri game. I mean, a 4th and 17 is just like, that's not something I'm going to really kill you for. If you're Billy Napier, that's not that you're not going to be the target of that. Florida State game, conservative play calling, yeah, but I mean, the tide of the game really turned with the Jamari Lyons spitting in someone else's face, which absolute props to the player that Jamari Lyons spit in his face. Because I'm not an overly aggressive man. I'm not a violent man. If you spit in my face, we're both getting ejected. Like it's as simple as that. So kudos to that player for staying calm. Because if you even attempt to spit at me, hands. So kudos to that guy. The targeting call, which I get it. Bryce Thornton and Jaden Hill both had the hit on the slide. I fault Jaden Hill way more than Bryce Thornton because at least Bryce Thornton's a true freshman. I'm only going to be so mad about that. Play calling sucked, but the scheme can work. Billy Napier is bad at play calling in general. I've always said I don't have a problem with the scheme. I have a problem with when Billy calls what he calls. So play calling needs to improve. And Billy Napier, you need to focus on the other details that matter more. Cut and dry. The details that matter more is what Billy Napier needs to focus on. So we're going to spend the rest of this show talking about where this Florida Gators team can find their next OC, what he brings to the table. Because again, what we're looking for here is not someone to revolutionize the wheel. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to come in, probably call a similar offense to what we've seen, be better at it, let Billy Napier back off and focus more on just being a better head coach, because that's what he needs to focus on. Like I mean, plain and simple. Keep it respectful, keep it real, all that stuff. Before we talk about those potential hires, Florida Gator season has just ended. My heart is broken. Florida Gators men's basketball is here. If you're looking for tickets late to those games, Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off with Game Time. So download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So this week and probably in the coming weeks until Florida hires an offensive coordinator, probably we're going to look at and talk about some names that I think Florida should/will look at. Some of these are names that I'm like, hey, there's no Napier connection, but it's a hire I'd really like, and some are this is the most likely one. Like the most likely hire I think is Jeff Scott. Jeff Scott's been the name that we mentioned. I think the first time I talked about Jeff Scott on Locked On Gators was like October, maybe late September. Currently unemployed. They overlapped at Clemson from 2008, 2010. Jeff Scott is my front runner in the sense of I think he's the most likely hire. Talk about a couple of things. One, he was like a partial play caller at Clemson. He called the passing plays mostly, and that's, I mean, something that Florida needs to improve on. Also, that was a while ago, but he helped build the Trevor Lawrence Clemson offense back then. Proven developer and recruiter at wide receiver. He was the head coach at South Florida. He's a talented recruiter, established in Florida, in the Tampa area, which obviously helps over. His scheme is very similar to Billy Napier's. And I think that's one of the biggest parts where the scheme is translatable. The scheme, plain and simple, there's scheme continuity there. And that's going to be a big part of this for Billy Napier. Because here's another thing. Billy Napier, like most college coaches, are likely going to hire a coach that he worked with elsewhere. If he's looking at coordinators, position coaches, whatever it might be, he's probably looking for coaches that he's worked with before. Jeff Scott is one of those, although it's been a while. But Jeff Scott, things kind of just align. Unemployed right now, took a year off from coaching. Maybe he's ready. South Florida experience, being the head coach there. He's seen Trevor Lawrence's offense work. He's the favorite guy. He's the one, again, that he's the easiest access. He's not a sexy hire. I'm not going to say that. I will say I don't hate it because, again, my main reasoning for Billy Napier needing to hire an offensive coordinator is so that Billy Napier can be a better head coach. I'm fine with the offensive system. I'm fine with the offensive scheme. So my main concern is Billy Napier being able to run this team better. So for Jeff Scott, there's scheme continuity. That works out well with your offensive recruits because all of your offensive recruits are like, okay, I was sold on this. I'm still getting this. Then I look at someone like Willy Korn. Willy Korn is, I think, a little bit more of a fantasy hire, but one that Florida Gators fans should recognize or should get familiar with. He's the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Liberty right now. He's at Coastal Carolina before. We spoke a lot about Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina last year and that very up-tempo, RPO-heavy offense, all that fun stuff. We talked about all that. Napier's connection to Willy Korn is that, yes, when Napier was OC QB coach at Clemson, Willy Korn was a quarterback. So that's their connection. Again, I don't think it's as popular right now, but Willy Korn is one that I'd be a big fan of. There's a couple of these that I don't think are very popular on like Twitter or Reddit or wherever people are talking about the OC stuff. Or they might be. I'm not going to pretend that I spend time reading every fan fiction that we get, but Willy Korn, someone you should recognize. Jake Peetz is another one that I haven't seen literally a single time mentioned, but I think Jake Peetz is a fantastic scheme fit if we're talking about scheme continuity. For Jake Peetz, recruiting would be the biggest question mark, just given that he spent most of his 17-year career, so his experience, but most of his 17-year career in the NFL. He only recruited for a few years. He was the offensive coordinator at LSU. Ready? Offensive coordinator at LSU. Like, this hurts considering last night's game. Jake Peetz was the offensive coordinator at LSU, and Tyrion Davis-Price ran for like 275, 285 yards against Florida in 2021. Hurts, right? However, Jake Peetz is someone who is right now the LA Rams pass game coordinator. Rams, an offense that is very similar to what Billy Napier likes to do schematically. Again, we'll go more in depth on all these guys as we get through, but names to get familiar with. Jake Peetz did turn down the quarterback coach job at Nebraska under Matt Rule. He previously worked for Matt Rule at the Panthers. But maybe offensive coordinator job could sway him. Jake Peetz was an analyst at Alabama, while Billy Napier was wide receiver coach. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is also brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. You still got college football, you got college basketball, NBA, NHL, NFL, English Premier League, if that's what you're into. I tried that yesterday. Man, Brentford, if you would have just scored, life would have been a lot better. Just saying. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Remember that FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Another name, Charlie Weis Jr. Also important to note, maybe Charlie Weis Jr. was the offensive coordinator at South Florida under Jeff Scott. Jeff Scott, when he was a head coach, did not call plays. It was Charlie Weis Jr. And guess what? Charlie Weis Jr. at South Florida did not have a bad offense at all. It wasn't the offense that was bad. No. It was the talent that was bad. It was so much of this team that just did not work. Now, keep in mind, last season when Florida played South Florida, it was not Charlie Weis Jr. He was at Ole Miss. But the first 2 years at South Florida, he was OC and QB coach. He was also at FAU before that. Charlie Weis Jr. is a name that I would like to keep in common, or to keep just close there, because last year when we talked about the OC possibility, Charlie Weis Jr. is a name that I spoke about, mostly because he has that RPO heavy experience at Ole Miss right now. He's not the play caller. Lane Kiffin is. But Charlie Weis Jr., that RPO style offense, maybe DJ Lagway running that. You bring a little bit high power offense there. Charlie Weis Jr. is also an analyst at Alabama when Napier is wide receivers coach. So your offense would evolve a little bit to more RPO style, but still very, you can wide zone heavy, all that fun stuff. Andy Kotelnicki is another one. Only coach on this list that has never been at the same school as Billy Napier and never went to Florida, like doesn't have a direct connection. Andy Kotelnicki is currently the Kansas Jayhawks offensive coordinator. I don't know how you bring him over from Kansas because he's already getting paid $1 million annually at Kansas. He's been with Lance Leopold for years. But Andy Kotelnicki's offense is very similar to Billy Napier's. You got heavy pistol usage, wide zone runs, pre-snap motion. It's very similar to what Billy Napier does, but it's more fun. And again, you're looking for play calling here. You could talk about, let's see, Shea Tierney is one. Shea Tierney is currently the New York Giants quarterback coach, which I get it. Not a super promising position. Also an analyst at Alabama while Billy Napier was wide receiver coach. Shea Tierney's basically followed Brian Dable everywhere Brian Dable has gone since Alabama. That's been that. And look, Giants suck right now. Brian Dable still doing his thing. Brian Dable did his thing with the Buffalo Bills. Shea Tierney, bring that over a bit. I don't think that one's super likely. I think Shea's gonna stay with the Giants and probably be offensive coordinator if they hire Mike Kafka, who's currently the Giants offensive coordinator, rumored to be looking to go to college. Don't think that there's a connection there for Billy Napier to bring him in. You look at, there's Phil Trotwin, who of course played for Florida, so no connection to Billy Napier, but does have a connection to the Florida Gators. He's currently the Penn State offensive line coach. He's not filling in for offensive coordinator after they made the move there a few weeks ago. It's Jawan Sater that's calling plays there now. Justin Stepp is the South Carolina wide receiver coach right now. Could look at him. Chancey Stuckey, wide receiver coach. Because don't forget, a lot of these, Jeff Scott's a wide receiver guy. You look at Justin Stepp, Chancey Stuckey, wide receiver guys. Billy Gonzalez, 1-year contract at wide receiver coach. Odds are your offensive coordinator is going to have a secondary position or a position assigned to him. Wide receivers, most likely. Maybe offensive line. I think you might have to do that for Phil Trotman, but then we're back in the same spot of Billy Napier calling plays, and no one wants that. So that's what you do. I know the Phil Trotman is someone that people mention in the Locked On Gators Discord a lot, and I just don't see how you get him to come to Florida as just an O-line coach. I get it. He went to Florida. He is also from the Northeast. He's near his home now. Hard sell. It's a hard sell. I just think it is. But for me, personally, Jeff Scott's the most likely. I know Cade Bell is another one with Western Carolina. But Jeff Scott, for me, is the most likely hire. Willy Korn should be up there. Shea Tierney is not. Charlie Weis Jr. hopefully up there. Again, I'm hoping that Andy Kotelnicki. Hopefully Jake Peetz is someone that I think does deserve a little bit of more recognition. But Billy Napier needs to hire an offensive coordinator or my heart will break. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Gators your first listen, second listen, whatever it is, listen of the day. It will never get lost on me. And I'm going to say this for the week because I'm in like incredibly grateful mode right now, but it will never get lost on me that like, this is ridiculous that I get paid to do this and it's a job. So thank you. If you've ever tuned in, if you've ever listened, I very much appreciate that. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We'll be back tomorrow. I don't know if we're talking about the game or OC hires. We'll see. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work, Whole 9 Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33, and I'll see you all tomorrow.